You're listening to TechRecruit, a podcast that educates talent acquisition and recruitment professionals on innovation to attract talent across all industries. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the TechRecruit Podcast. My name is Stacey Broadwell. I will be your host. And today we have a very awesome guest. His name is Will Staneys. Welcome, Will Staneys, to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Will, you are the CEO and founder of Proactive Talent. And Proactive Talent is helping how companies evolve their employer branding and recruitment processes. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, we do really three main things. We help companies with talent attraction piece, so the front end of the funnel. So employer branding, content, and media. So helping with their media spends and strategies. And then we also have our recruiting consulting side. So helping people and companies build out their recruiting function, whether that be a startup building a team for the first time and a strategy for the first time, or a well-established company looking to innovate what they're doing. And then lastly, we have sort of a light RPO, which is an on-demand recruiting model, which is really in-source recruiting rather than outsource, where we have very experienced contract recruiters that come in and work as an extension of teams, but you can turn us on and off as you need.
That is a very robust company. You offer so many different services, where I see a lot of companies that are segmented into one different profile, whether it be in RPO or just in recruiting or in just doing the media portion. Is there one component that you really enjoy the most, or does it all kind of flow together?
No, it's really intentional, actually. It's because we have a sort of foundational belief at my firm, which is over 40 plus people now, that these things are all related, and it's a very holistic approach. We really believe that our clients come to us because they have people helping them with their hiring that deeply understand employer branding and that aspect of recruiting and talent attraction, and people that are doing employer branding and helping them build their brand and recruitment marketing strategy that deeply understand how to apply that in recruiting function and team. And so, and most of our clients, I'd say probably 60% of our clients use both sides of the house together. But there are plenty that will come to us for one thing. I like to say we're really great at all of them. And it's actually, to us, a competitive advantage that most of our competitors only do one of these things.
Definitely. Yeah. So in that service of your market, what would you say the size of the companies or the profile of some of your bigger clientele is?
Yeah, it's extremely varied. We work with a lot of VCs who send their portfolio companies. So we've worked with companies as small as 2 people growing to 25 people that year.
Wow.
Or we've also worked with some of the largest, most iconic brands in the world, like GE, over 300,000 employees. We've worked with Stryker, a lot of big enterprise companies as well. It really depends. And that's sort of the flexibility of our model, is that we can scale and build out a small team for a small company or a big team. Like we recently did a really large healthcare, like a hospital network here in East Texas, where we deployed 18 recruiters in 2 weeks and helped them hire over 1,200 people in 6 months, saving them $2.6 million. Right, on their staffing costs. We lowered their cost per hire by $2,000 per hire, in total cost. And so it's this scalable model that makes us a really great partner, but that holistic approach as well that makes us get results. Yeah.
That's really, so that's kind of an RPO service, the recruiters on demand.
A little bit. But RPOs you're outsourcing your process to somebody else. With us, you're insourcing. We are bringing the resources to you, and we actually become part of your team. But we're like a contractor. You can put us on a 3-6 month contract, or if your hiring demand slows down, you can actually pause us. I'll put those resources on another project, and then you can turn us back on when you need. It's a very flexible model. And it's more natural to how recruiting actually happens at fast-growing companies. Recruiting, it goes up and down. You hit a big round of funding or a big quarter, your hiring goes up, and then you hit a bad quarter, your hiring stops. A lot of companies right now, what they have to do is they have to fire their recruiters. A lot of people say in our industry, right, the first one to get cut is HR and recruiting because it's a cost center, and too many companies think of it that way. And our goal is that companies, maybe before you take the expense of hiring a full-on team without really knowing what your long-term hiring needs are going to be, hire somebody like us to come in and fill that gap and figure it out. And then we actually hire your full-time team that you need long-term. And then our job is actually to get out of the way. It's actually to work ourselves out of a job, because I don't like seeing my friends get laid off. I don't like companies bloating up the staff that they need and then having to let them go later. And I know as a former TA leader how fast your hiring demand goes up or down, and to be flexible in how fast business moves in this world that we live in now. You need a partner like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that so your recruiters then, are they salaried professionals?
Yeah, a lot of our team is, but a lot of our recruiters aren't. These folks are they're free agents. They're freelance professional remote recruiters and sourcers. On average, our recruiters on average have 10 years of experience. We have many that have 20 or more. And then we also provide them with regular training. So we're always upskilling them. Even ones that aren't even on an engagement, they're still in our tribe. And maybe they're taking a contract on their own somewhere else, but they're still in our tribe, and getting trained from us is just a part of being a part of our tribe and our community. And then when we have projects that match them, we activate them. Now there are some in that they're just so good and they're on engagements with us all the time that we know when they're coming off engagements, and then we're getting new projects for as soon as they get off, they're on it. So it gives some stability to these freelancers in their work. It allows them to be entrepreneurial and have flexibility in their work, but have sort of the great things about being a part of a company and a culture, and a consistency of work that you typically would get with a full-time role. But you don't have to have a boss, which is awesome.
I find, and I find this so incredible that you're able to offer this on-demand service for recruitment professionals. And I've worked with a Fortune 500 agency. That's actually how I got started in recruitment. And I remember we had salaried professionals within the network, and we would send them out on contract opportunities. And in between those contracts, if we didn't have something, they were considered benched, but they're on salary. So oftentimes we would have, a software engineer who was sitting next to us looking at resumes and doing sourcing. So that ability to find that salary professional the next opportunity. But I see that distinction where you're offering not just the salary, but also the contracted recruiter who's in their own regard running their own desk and has their own clientele. And
yeah, they can bring their own client in here, and then we actually give them 10% of the profit back to them, because that's revenue we didn't have to spend to acquire that client. And so they earn more income, whether they do the work that way as well. And so that's just part of our model, right? And then I think also you got to think of the reality of what today's business world is. A large percentage of the working population do not want full-time employment. We have healthcare marketplace. People can buy private insurance. They don't need an employer for these benefits that typically what you would need from in full-time employment for. And the market's good enough right now that the thing is we don't take anybody in unless we know we have 3 to 6 months worth, or probably about 6 months worth of work for them. And then that gives us enough time to get them work even when they're done with that work. But you don't even have that kind of job security in a full-time job as a recruiter anymore, right? You can be a full-time recruiter and be great and work at a company and get laid off after 6 months if hiring slows down, right? You don't have any guarantees anywhere anymore. Companies get acquired, they get bought up, and then they got to let people go all the time. And so, except at the same time, you also have a boss, and you're sort of stifled in where you can go. And maybe you get a 3% on average increase in your pay each year. When you're a consultant, when you're a freelancer, when you're a free agent, you demand your price and what your time is worth, and you're accountable to results for that pay too. And so it incentivizes so many much better behaviors that it's become a very powerful model. And it's where I think a lot of the world is heading. There's always going to be need for full-time in-house recruiters. You need that. There's also always going to be time that you need, a contingent search firm to work on that niche position to come in and you're going to pay a fee on, right?
Sure.
That's fine. But But if you're going through periods of growth and surge, those are never sustained, right? Those are always bumps, right? And then, we have economy goes down or your hiring slows. You don't need that full-time staff. It's a lot of times in recruiting, companies are making long-term decisions for short-term problems.
Yeah.
And what we are is a short-term solution that helps you build a long-term strategy.
So for the recruiters who are listening in our audience, I'm curious because I feel like there is a discrepancy on what's posted online or in those salary calculators. And I was going to ask you, what do you see as salary pay grades appropriately for sourcers, recruiters, senior level, top to bottom?
Oh gosh, I'm not a comp strategist. There's people that charge $250 an hour just to answer that kind of question. And I do hire a lot of freelance recruiters, but even that kind of market rate is very different than maybe like an in-house recruiter. So I wouldn't really know how to answer that specifically. I think whatever they feel is what they're worth to be paid based on their experience and what a company is willing to pay them to do it.
That was a very appropriate answer to that. So I want to ask you, I'll pivot a little bit. How did you find yourself in recruitment? What is Will Staneys' background?
Yeah, I've always been a little entrepreneurial. I never actually made a salary or had a salary job until I went into in-house recruiting. Prior to getting into this industry, I had about a decade in sales, and my education background was in mass communications and advertising. I was actually in mortgage banking when I made the transition into recruiting. It was during the recession. I was laid off probably about 5 times in a single year. And then one of my and then I started to build my business back up by teaching real estate agents how to use social media, which was just becoming a thing then, to get first-time home buyers and folks like that, and get those kind of clients. And in turn, I would say, hey, I'll teach you how to get new home buyers and you let me do the mortgage. And that's how I rebuilt that business. But then one of my clients was a recruiter, and they were in the same building as me. And they asked me, like, hey, can you show us that stuff that you've been teaching real estate agents with social media? Like, can you teach us, do like a social media class with us? And I went in there and did it. And they were like, whoa, we got to introduce you to somebody. And so I got introduced by one of those recruiters to the head of global sourcing at VMware. And this was during that really huge period of growth where they're hiring like 4,000 people a year. Mm-hmm. And I went into this interview for an entry-level sourcing job. It would have been a big step back for me. And I pitched a different job. I say, like, hey, what if I come in and I build out, social media pages. I train all the recruiters on how to source on social media. And he hired me on the spot. He said, yeah, like, go ahead. And I got to be sort of a kid in the candy store. He was like, and I built what is now VMware Careers, probably one of the best case studies of an employer brand and longevity. That the brand's now been around. I think this is its 10-year anniversary this year as an employer brand. And that was my first baby that I built, and it's won tons of awards. The person that I hired out of college on my team now is the head of all that employer branding there. She's been there the entire time, and they're doing awesome stuff. And so after that, I went over to SuccessFactors, and there I got to kind of play a little bit in product development. So now, SuccessFactors had bought Jobs to Web, which was a technology I used to measure the effectiveness of my recruitment marketing and employer brand. And I got to be there and influence that product, as well as build the program over at SAP. So SAP acquired SuccessFactors, and then I was actually one of the first on the recruiting team to go over to the SAP side and help them, redo their entire global recruitment process, and then 2, revamp and relaunch their employer brand as Life at SAP. And that was my second big baby. And Life at SAP is still there. A lot of the team members I work with are still there doing amazing work, and they've won probably over 200 international awards for employer branding and recruitment marketing. After that, I went into TA leadership. I was the very first TA leader at Glassdoor. where I helped build out that program and team. Shortly after that, I went over to Twilio during their rapid pre-IPO growth and building out their function as their first TA leader. And after that, I decided, you know what, I've been going to these companies and either building machines from the ground up or innovating old sort of recruiting models. And as soon as the machine sort of maintains itself, I get bored and move on to the next machine. And I decide I'm just going to build a company where I just do this for a living, where I just go into companies and help them build modern approaches to hiring. And that's what I've been doing. And now this is the longest job I've ever had, which is doing proactive talent. And then I also have a company that I partner with Brian Cheney, who's the head of employer brand at Indeed, called Talent Brand Alliance. And that's a community for people in this growing field of talent branding, employer branding, recruitment marketing, and helping advance that industry and that profession.
Wow, that is a phenomenal career path. And I can see too, like the opportunities that you undertook in helping these companies solve these pain points and being able to attract talent and build out that social media component, especially when the social media was really new and that ability to
now that's just a small part of it, right? Social is just one of a multitude of channels to engage with people, in the recruiting process. But it really did start there because I think nobody really understood social. And so they had us millennials come in and deploy that type of stuff into recruiting. And I think I was very fortunate to go into organizations that made me a part of the TA team, actually gave me recs to work on, let me really deeply understand recruiting. And then I was able to be sort of a desired talent in the space because I had this marketing employer brand background, but I also really understood strategic recruiting and how to build recruiting programs as well.
It's interesting kind of on that social media front, because I recall back to when I first started in recruiting, and I think it was in 2007, 2008, and I was on LinkedIn, and I was working for a Fortune 500 staffing agency, and they were very fearful of their employees being on a social network. And it took a lot of education, and I was doing brown bags on the usefulness of it. So it's really interesting how far the industry has come from overcoming the fear to like, okay, how do we harness this and really kind of drive our talent attraction through this channel?
Oh yeah, I remember one of the first things I got slapped on the wrist at VMware was they do at the time, I don't know if they do them anymore, but they used to do these Friday beer bashes at all their offices globally. They'd bring out some kegs and people could have a drink on a Friday and get to know their colleagues a little bit better. And I posted photos of that on social, and people in HR were like, no, you can't. What is this guy doing? He can't be sharing. And I said, is it true to what it's like to work here? And they're like, well, yeah, but we don't really want to advertise. Like, what? Aren't you trying to hire engineers? Why would you not want to highlight the fact that you give them free beer on Fridays? And then they kind of came around, and it was like this change of pace. And then, working with companies and learning from my peers in the finance industry, which is highly compliance driven, right? And risk averse. It was really big in that sector, but even them you're seeing now start to really loosen up and realize like, man, if we're going to survive, we got to embrace the social thing,
Yeah, that is really interesting. And there are still companies who are have to adhere to those compliance issues, So I'm hosting a CTO Roundtable at a brewery of all places in a couple weeks, and it's for software engineers and developers to meet heads of chief technology officers, and their social media professionals, because it's aerospace, the social media professionals who are coming can't take pictures and posting pictures of people drinking.
Yeah.
But I have other companies in Los Angeles who, they will bring you in and show you their liquor cabinet inside their office, and be like, oh yeah, on our meetings, if you need to take a shot, go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's so different with every company and every industry in a bit of ways. I think what's important for companies to do though is just to decide what is your situation and not take the approach of this is what you can't do with new media, right? But more of like, hey, this is how we use social media, and here are a few like rules of like, if you do this, for our industry it creates problems, right? And so take it from more of an empowerment and an education standpoint. I think a lot of things that companies did wrong at first at the admin of social was be afraid of it and just say no and just block people from it. But that's like taking away their cell phones when they walk in the door of the office now, right? It doesn't work.
Interesting. Yeah, that is kind of a really good analogy. So I'm curious because, so what would be, and maybe there's not a typical, it's like you said, there's so many different ways that companies have to deal with compliance issues, or that they are looking to grow, or maybe what their goals are. But maybe what are some of the catalysts that you've seen for companies in beginning that branding program?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways that companies start this. One is that they start to recognize that it is an important part of hiring now. We are in an economy, at least for the foreseeable short-term future, that is booming, and we're at full employment. And this is really across most of the modern world right now. And you have to set yourself apart. This is not a market where people are happy to be employed. You have to show why you're different. And also, companies are competing with other companies outside their even their own industry more, right? Like every company is a tech company now, right? And so you have different competitors in the space. So I think the first step for any company to realize that, or to start building an employer brand, is to realize that it's important and something that you have to put budget and time and resources towards. The next step would be to figure out, are we going to build those resources internally, or do we hire in an expert, someone outside of our bubble that can look at us and in an unfiltered way as sort of a third-party expert to help us audit and understand where we currently are and what we can do to improve. Some companies end up doing this themselves. They hire someone and they actually build a role for EB, and I love that. It's a slower way of doing it because that person then has to learn that industry and that job and scale it over time. And I was that person, so I know it's possible. But it took me a year, 2 years to build the brand at VMware. It took me a year, 2 years to build it at SAP. A good consultant that can come in and has done it before, is 3-6 months, right? To really build that program. So, I mean, that's first, I think, is just looking and saying, is there buy-in at the organization, and are we actually going to invest in building this for our hiring efforts?
One of the, and I don't want to name any names, but maybe I'll make an intro later. One of the largest employers in Orange County, they were at my conference, OC TechRecruit, in 2018. And initially I had reached out to them because I had asked their brand ambassador if they would be speak on one of our panels on employer branding. And she admitted that she had just gotten hired. She comes from a social media background, and that they had a lot of initiatives ahead of them. And as she was going down the line of all the things that she was going to do, and she was trying to figure out, we just started laughing. We said, you know what, you're going to have some great stories at the end of this year. And she said, yeah, but admittedly, I could use some help. So if you have anybody you'd want to introduce to me. And it's interesting because you have so many of those different stories, and this is the largest employer of that region. So that's really interesting.
And I would say taking someone social media and then letting them go in and explore employer branding and a function was really great a few years ago. Today, employer branding is just so much more than just social savvy. It is as complex and integrated of a practice as your consumer marketing, and it has the opportunity of having just as much ROI as well. Because when you do a really good job of employer branding, you shorten the cycle of hiring, and you increase the quality of candidates. So you hire faster and cheaper. Also, the growing cost of the old model of hiring, so the post and pray model of job posting and waiting for good talent to come to you, is exorbitantly expensive now. Just a posting on a place like LinkedIn or Indeed can be upwards of $500 for a 30-day posting, right? And so doing that way and then waiting for the right talent to come is very, very expensive. But if you make that upfront investment to build a strong employer brand to where your company becomes a magnet for the right kind of talent for you, it pays for itself over and over again for years to come.
So to go back to the catalyst, I mean, you nailed it right there. It's it's taking too long to hire. We're not getting the right talent. You know, what do we need to do that's differently? We can't just post and pray this is taking too long. And hiring somebody who's got that social media background and kind of like getting them there to like drive some engagement. That's
I think it's great, but hire someone like me to come in and grow that person, and then I'll get out of the way and they'll be off to the races, right? But it's sort of like, you know, earlier I was saying when how they hire recruiters, it's they're hiring a big internal recruiting team, which is a long-term solution to a short-term problem. When it comes to employer branding and investment in that, that's where they're trying to do short-term solutions to a long-term problem. And because companies typically think, oh, well, we need to hire people right now. Let's just buy some LinkedIn, buy some Indeed. Let's hire an early talent to come in and build our employer brand. But it takes a long time. And the longer you wait as a company to start investing in building your employer brand, the longer it will take you to finally have an engine that attracts talent repeatedly. And in a year or so, then you're going to be closing recs in 20 days instead of 45. But to expect that you're going to all of a sudden build a brand that's going to show you amazing results in a very, very short amount of time is a bit kidding yourself. It doesn't work that way quite. You can get some really quick success by making minor tweaks or doing an initiative or a campaign. We do that for companies all the time. Like that UTH case that I was telling where they saved $2.6 million. Well, we were doing the media and brand behind that recruiting effort. So there are ways to get quick, immediate ROI and results. But I think when you're thinking as a company, like, what should we do to build our employer brand? I think you need to prepare yourself that this is a journey. This is a long-term strategy that you're building for the future success of your organization. It's not a Band-Aid. There's no lipstick on a pig solution for it.
I came into met with another client and they had a really interesting situation. Maybe you've seen this as far as like catalysts go, but they were dealing with a bit of a reputation problem. They had just laid off a whole bunch of people the year before. They felt that software engineers, they speak with one another. It's a community where, oh, you don't want to go there because of all the reviews on Glassdoor. How do you help a company in such a situation? And before this, they were doing fantastic. Got an amazing brand. I've always heard about them, but then suddenly, they went through a round of layoffs, bad reputation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the first step is are they really a shitty place to work or not? That answers whether I can help a company or not. I'm honestly, the first thing we do with employer brand engagement, or we're looking at their Glassdoor, is we actually talk to their employees to validate if what they're saying, who they are as a company, is actually true to the experience of working at their company. And there's been times where I go in to start an employer brand engagement with a company, and after the audit phase, I actually pause it and I say, I'm sorry, we can't actually activate employer brand for you right now until you fix these glaring HR issues, because we don't go out and tell the marketplace that you're a great employer if you are in fact not a great employer. You can't lie to candidates, because here's the thing that's going to happen. You're going to hire those people, offering them the roses in the world and sparkly unicorns. And then they're going to come in and realize it is not that, and they're going to leave. And that's going to cost you a heck of a lot more than just not hiring for that position overall. What we do is we then give them the data, and we even have great HR consultants that will come in and help build culture and things like that to fix those issues in a transparent way. And then we've come back into those clients after that. And then we say, now you have a really great underdog story. You have a story to tell, like, hey, we had this bad layoff. We had a really bad middle management layer for a while, but we fixed it. And this is our brand now. And this is our story. And then when you authentically go out there and tell that, people go, hey, there's a company that's acting like a human being, that they're not perfect, but they worked on it and they got better. That's the kind of company. Now you actually have a brand that is even more powerful than if you've just been a great company to begin with. You know, like you have you have the ability that you're so transparent and so honest that you actually show that you're not perfect. And everybody who's ever worked at any possible company ever in their life knows that there is no perfect company. Google, Facebook, those great, amazing employers that everyone talks about, guess what their average tenure is for an employee? You know, right?
No.
It's 12 months.
Really?
They were just such a wonderful, amazing place to work. Why is the average employee only there a year, right? The average tenure across the US for any job is like 3.8 now years, right? It used to be back in the day, like 7-10 years, right? It's shortening, right? And so even they have a hard time hiring. Even they invest in their employer brands a lot, right? And so, yeah, I think it's really something to think about, you know, as far as
I feel like you were talking about like being the company almost being vulnerable, being human, right?
Yeah. We're in the age of transparency now, and that's another thing that social media has affected, right? That you can't hide anymore. Look, we got the Me Too movement going, the way our politics have changed because of social media, the way business has changed with social media. You actually can't afford not to be transparent, and you also can't afford not to treat your employees well now. It's like not even a possibility. You can't hide.
So two questions, like the pro and the con.
Yeah.
What are some of the worst things that you've seen that made a company suck? And what are some of the best benefits maybe that you've seen companies offer in contrast?
I mean, benefits are here, there. I think at the end of the day, what most people actually want, at least the majority of the workforce entering the market now, is they want a company that's actually doing things that they care about. They're making an impact. They feel like they're gonna, and that doesn't have to be world changing. It could be like, hey, our mission is to make sure that supply chains are efficient across the entire commercial shipping sector. Like, that's cool. That I get to affect that thing that makes the world go round, right? You can always do it to a higher mission. Benefits and perks that they can offer. I mean, it's really, it's apples and oranges. Every company has benefits at some point. I think that's a personal decision of what they need and how you can entice certain people. Things that I've seen companies do that make them kind of a crappy employer from time to time is the opposite of that, which is to not really listen to employees, to sort of act purely in a profit way. Like, everyone wants to be a good corporate citizen and make sure the company is growing. But when companies just ignore employees, or they have sort of this top-down model of communication where like everything comes from leadership and down, and there's no upward communication back to leadership, those are companies that ultimately are going to fail. Like literally, like, because people have a lot of options now. And if they don't feel like they're being heard, or they can affect change, or if they have control over their career, they will go somewhere that they can.
So having a cause or a mission that the employees can get on board with and feel that touches them, or that they can get behind.
And having values, like having a stance on like why you built this company and what's the purpose, and how you work together as a group. And I really believe that companies are communities, and they need to operate that way, right? They operate as a corporate entity, and they're there to drive profit for shareholders and all that stuff. You can do both. But they're also a community of individuals. Without your people, you would not be anything, right? We hear that all the time in every recruiting keynote ever, right? But what I mean, it really, in the way that you function and build your business and manage your people, you really have to think of them as a community that they're in the trenches with your customers. They're in there building your product. Like, they have feedback to executive leaderships and insights that you don't see. Like, I'm a CEO now, and I understand that now because there are things that my consultants or my recruiters are seeing with clients that I don't know. And so I want them to be able to communicate up to me on how we can make our business better.
So the
So that's a big thing that so that's a big thing that a lot of companies don't do, is they don't know how to effectively empower employees to have a voice, or even want them to in some cases, right? Because that means they have to pay them more and all that stuff, which is tough.
Yeah. So that said, I'm curious on your own personal mission statement. What is your cause in your employer brand internally?
Oh yeah. Our mission is to help as many companies as possible revolutionize the way they hire and attract talent at its core. And then our values all support that. So we have a value of autonomy. We're accountable to each other and our clients. We have a value called Kaizen. It's probably one of our most popular, which just means to just continually improve. Every time we do a new initiative as a company, we have what we call as a Kaizen meeting afterwards. Well, how can we have done that better? What went really well? What didn't go well? And then we actually operationalize that and make changes right after that thing that we just did. We do the same thing with client engagements. We kick off client engagement. We do the engagement. Once that engagement's over, our sales, ops, marketing, and consulting team all get together and they go for 30 minutes, an hour, and go, this is our Kaizen meeting. Hey, what went great on the engagement? Well, if we had a better onboarding process for this, that would have been it. And then we immediately institutionalize that knowledge and get better. So Kaizen is a real big one. Another one is do what's right. Whether that be with our each other, our clients. So with me, the way I operate as a leader is I'm always going to do what's right by my people. I pay by a performance-based model. With revenue share, everyone at our company is sort of an owner in the company. They make more when the company grows and is successful and hits our goals. So I'm always going to do what's right. With that, there's always ambiguity in certain things too, because it's sort of undefined structure. It's not like a salary and just benefits structure. So there's going to be gray areas, and at that point, it's my employees trust me, and I trust them, and we are always going to be able to work it out and do whatever is right. And the same thing with our customers. There's a lot of ambiguity with what happens in recruiting. It's a people, human-centric business. It's inherently imperfect, but we're always going to do what's right.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so interesting. And you see that so often in recruitment, that you have that performance-based model within your profit sharing, or versus like the salaried, you either get commission or you get like a little bit of both. And oftentimes it's difficult to retain your employees in that regard, because either they might find something different or the performance isn't there.
Well, there's a certain type of person and that does well in this environment, right? And I've had people come in here that aren't meant for that. So the folks at Practic Talent typically are very entrepreneurial themselves. They actually like performance-based pay because they're not being capped on what their earning potential is and what they can make. When you are a full-time employee at a company, like I said before, you're on a salary. You're capped at what the company is willing to pay you. Even if you bring in $2 million for that company that year through your own individual efforts, you're still just going to make that $90K a year. Maybe you get a little performance bonus from it, but if you're adding transformative value to the company, shouldn't you get a little bigger piece of that pie? The average employee at Google produces $1 million in revenue a year for them.
Sure.
On average, right? The average employee at Google makes $200K though. So they're compensated pretty well. It's just a different model. We've had people come in here that they didn't like the continual change. They want something that's a little bit more, consistent and stable. I've helped those people find full-time roles at one of our clients or full-time roles elsewhere, because I just want people doing things they enjoy and making the kind of money they want to make. But I'll tell you that the consultants that have been with us the longest and the ones that are successful, they're making more money than they ever did in an in-house role. And they have the work-life balance and integration that they really want to have, and they have families, and they want to be able to, take a month off during the year. Well, that's cool. They can do that. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's just a different lifestyle, I think.
How do you find somebody who's entrepreneurial minded? Other than them having their own, thing going on like you and I.
This very thing that we're doing right now, I make it completely transparent and known that what kind of culture we are and how we work and how we incentivize. And the people who are less risk averse, that need a full-time job doing the same thing and need exactly what they, we have an interview question that we ask when people come in, and we go, if I gave you a job and one was a full out description of the job from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., exactly everything you need to do to be successful in this job. And then I also gave you a job where I just had sort of bullet points of things that you need to accomplish, but no specifics. Or if I gave you a blank piece of paper, which of these jobs are the most exciting for you?
Yeah. I would pick the one that had like the initiatives that needed to be done and allow me to get them done in my own way.
Yeah. But, and you're an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the answer that we typically look for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It actually, and in some roles, we actually want someone that they're actually excited about a blank sheet of paper and they get to really build their role from the ground up. We have plenty of people like that here. And I think what's kind of great about our model too is we've had people come in as like a contract recruiter who have grown and built a consulting business within our function and are making way more money and having the kind of career they're able to move upward in their career and their earning potential so much faster than they ever would in a full-time role, because we have that flexibility. Because I'm constantly saying, hey, are you enjoying what you're doing? If you're not, let's get you into something else, right? Because that's the most important thing, is not just, are you doing a great job? I know when people are doing things that get them jazzed, they're doing a good job. And so my metric for employees and growth is, are you having fun doing what you're doing? Are you enjoying it? Are you passionate about what you're doing? And if not, let's move it. Let's adjust, because we're flexible that way.
That's interesting, because when you're dealing with entrepreneurs, sometimes it can be difficult to sit down with them and say, okay, we talked about these initiatives that you're going to do and these expectations that we had, and this is kind of where we're at. And sometimes you need to help move the needle with them a little bit. And that can be a delicate situation or a conversation. How do you approach those?
I think, it's just transparent communication. Like I don't think there's anyone at my company that would feel uncomfortable coming to me with a feedback, or like, hey, I think this is unfair, or hey, this thing I'm not really a big fan of. And I listen and I process that information and I do what's right. That's why we have these values, how we tackle any of these type of things. So that doesn't scare me, and it hasn't been a problem for us, at least in our current structure. Early on, before we had things kind of figured out, this is a new model. We've had people go in and out. We're trying, it's like an awkward teenager. But now I think we really articulate well and know who is successful here and how they're successful.
So in addition to proactive talent, you have the Alliance. And that looks like you've been doing that now for a couple of years. How did that come about?
It started as a Facebook group I had for some people that won the Glassdoor Talent Warrior Award the very first year in 2013. And it was like a dozen of us, and there wasn't a lot of people in the industry that just had full-time roles doing employer branding at a company, right, as practitioners. But that started to change as these sort of influencers in the space. I hate that word, but like these people, these pioneers, I like to call them pioneers. Like they're the first ones in doing this stuff, right? That group started to grow. And then me and Brian, we've been good friends. We're both here in Austin, been in the space. We were sitting over a pint and we were like, where do we go to learn about this thing? Like this employer branding is so new, and there aren't standards, there aren't, case studies. Like, where do we go? And where can practitioners come and learn from each other? And we were like, holy crap, there isn't a place. Let's make it. And so we'd been talking about it for years. And then finally in 2017, we actually made it in a formal community. And then from that came the in real life events with Talent Brand Summits. And now we have over 600 heads of employer branding and heads of talent acquisition from some of the most iconic brands in the world. And we do an event here in Austin and in London with a bunch of local charters and places like Atlanta and Austin, and soon San Francisco and Boston. And it's just been this organic, great thing. We have a board of really 7 amazing people in this space with a lot of experience. We've got a committee over knowledge base, which is building data and knowledge that we selfishly share with the whole industry. We have an events committee that helps make sure that we're doing events that people are getting the most value out of, and they're not just being sold to the whole time. They're really just networking, finding mentors. We have a whole committee led by Audra Knight, which is our mentorship committee, which is just connecting people who are new employer branding with people who've been doing it for a while and giving them and helping them facilitate a formal mentorship program. And so the employer branding is becoming so, I think, important to business, not just recruiting, but like as a business, from a strategic standpoint, that companies are really starting to invest in it now. And we've finally hit that point where it's time to start getting serious and putting our heads together and thinking like, how do we get more companies to embrace this, and how do we educate each other and up-level our industry as a whole in the process?
When you're approaching a company with who has the idea that they want to build out these programs, and you mentioned a little bit, you alluded to that one of the first processes or steps that you take is interviewing or talking to their employees and determining what keeps them there, what it is what they like, and
the
that
EVP
sort of
process. Mm-hmm.
How much of that is in looking at their data, and how do you go about evaluating that, if you do?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. But the thing is, most companies aren't capturing data on their employer brand, right? And so if you don't first, again, answer that question of, are we willing to invest in this thing that we don't quite understand yet, is very important, because to get the data that you need takes resource and investment and rallying your employees around an effort, which is hard. And it's also the thing about employer branding that makes it super complex, is that it involves every single part of the company. It's the most cross-functional role in any company other than maybe the CEO, but even more so because CEOs aren't typically spending time with every ground level employee all the time, whereas employer brand people are. They're like the internal reporter at the company, finding great stories that reinforce the mission of the company. And so they have to work with comms, with marketing, with corporate recruiting, HR, employee experience teams, finance, like everybody, right? And so it's complex. It's not easy, but nothing worth doing is. And I think a lot of people too think that, just because we have a well-known consumer brand, employer brand will be super easy. It's actually, I think it's harder, because you have preconceived notions. Take, for example, our client GoDaddy, right? Everyone knows who GoDaddy is, right? They've seen the Super Bowl commercial and stuff like that, but no one knew who they were as an employer. And they all had misperceptions of who they were as an employer because of that brand. I mean, if I told somebody 2-3 years ago that GoDaddy is one of the best employers when it comes to gender parity in pay, and also probably one of the most inclusive tech companies I've ever seen, they wouldn't believe me. Now that's starting to change from some of the effort that we've done with them and that they've been doing just to change their company. But that's the problem that big, well-known brands have, right? Look at Facebook, right? One of the top employers all the time, but they're going through turmoil right now around privacy concerns. They have an EB issue right now. Some high-level engineers not wanting to go to Facebook, right? Because creepy privacy stuff, right? Like that's a perception the market has that affects on the consumer side and with the government that is affecting their employer brand and their ability to hire, right? And so employer brand is super important, as you can tell by my passion for it.
So if in the beginning they don't know what data that they're supposed to be pulling from, or they don't have data, or they're not streamlining it, their employees aren't inputting it in a correct
data out there, right? A lot of companies do culture surveys, employee engagement surveys, right? That's data to look at. You know what your website traffic to your career site is, right? Maybe not every employer does, but a lot of them, right? You can probably go to marketing and be like, hey, can you hook this up to Google Analytics for me and tell me what kind of traffic we're getting to our career site and how long they're staying on it? Like that's free, right? So that's data. You have a Glassdoor, whether you've signed up for it or not. You have one probably if you're any kind of major employer. Even we have it, and we're only 40 employees, right? So that's data points right there. You get some of that for free, and you can look at what are people saying, what's your rating trends over time, and things like that. You have social sentiment. You can do socialmention.com and put in a few terms about working at your company and see what the sentiment around all that is. That's free, right? But companies aren't thinking about that and taking time to collect that data and measure it over time and adjust, right? And most of the culture surveys are more around like, well, are we doing a good job from a management level and leadership standpoint? Are we doing good from an HR standpoint? They're not looking and going, are we telling the marketplace the right story about what it's like to work here? Right? But they could, right?
Yeah. So you're looking at their current, you're taking a pulse of what they're currently doing, getting that quote unquote baseline, and then helping them develop campaigns, whether it's on social media, whether it's video. Are you able to help them create those campaigns and put them out there and then monitor that success?
Yeah, so we're really hands-on. Like when I say we're in-source, it means like we come in as an extension. Like we become your, like when we were working with GE Digital, we were their global employer brand team for like 9 months, and then help them build those capabilities and then pass it over to an internal team. And so it's different than going to like an ad agency who's going to really just like, what's your strategy? We'll do your creative, or here's your strategy. You do your creative. Like we go, hey, we're going to be a part of you for a bit. We're going to start a relationship. We're going to be a partner. We're going to be on X company team. And then we build it from within. And then once that machine is running and maintaining, then we get out of the way for you. And then if you got questions, we're still there. We check with clients after 3-6 months to see where their metrics are, because ultimately we want a good case study too, right? And we continue to monitor that, right?
That's really a really great space that you're in, because I see so often. I know so many companies. I could.
It's non-traditional for sure. A big part,
it's
like
evolving.
for us, it's evolving, and what's kind of great about models will evolve as business needs evolve. And the biggest thing for us, I think, is just the education and the sales process. Like when companies put us in an RFP, I laugh. I go, you're putting my company in an RFP is setting yourself up for failure, and it's setting us up to be compared against companies that are completely different models than us, right? RFPs are meant to be pretty much, they already have a company in mind, and then they're looking for comparisons to this company they're thinking about buying, right? Yeah. Right. Whereas with us, it's like, and same thing, like we use traditional RPO. It's a year or 2-year contract. You've got to be all in with that RPO, right? For the most part, right? Or if you're going to,
and you have to have somebody who can manage it internally for you.
Yeah. So you got to build up your current team. We're like, no, we will be your team. We'll integrate into you. We're chameleons. And that's another thing that we look for when we're hiring consultants and other folks at Private Talent is do you like change? Like I am inherently a person that I thrive on change. Not everybody is like that. And not everybody that's coming to Private Talent has been like that. And that's fine. But the people that come in here are really, really good. And for what we do, they thrive on it. Both affecting change, but then like going from, I mean, we've done everything from some of the largest food manufacturing companies. Like we work with the company that puts the potatoes on your dinner every night. Like that, we worked with Motel 6, with a large hospitality network, hospitals, big high-tech industries, fintech, across the board. And these consultants, they like that. It's like, oh, I get to learn a little bit more about fintech now and how what I do applies into that industry. And then, now I get to go into food service industry and see what that does. And it's pretty amazing what's different about these industries, but even more what's amazing, what's so similar to the problems that they have at a program level with recruiting and how we're able to solve them.
That's interesting because I feel like Lou Adler had the same sentiment, because he was saying how it doesn't matter if you're going into a small company or a huge company, enterprise level, that's a huge manufacturing or a restaurant like In-N-Out, the process is the same for recruitment.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah. I mean, the high level processes they go through, the stages of the candidate life cycle is the same, but now you have to tack on employer branding, right? The talent attraction piece, right? The trigger awareness, and then the call to action to apply. You have to really think about that full process, but every company has it. The thing is that the candidate's expectation are now becoming more in line with their consumer expectations, because it's all being done online. So whether I'm applying for a job, I'm ordering a pizza, I have relatively the same expectations of how that process should go using my phone or my computer, right? And so, but the problem is companies make it really easy to spend money at them, and they make it really hard to express interest in being employed by them. And it's not intentional. It's just their focus is on driving revenue and not so much on, they're not thinking long-term. You're going to drive revenue if you attract really great people that are going to be focused on driving revenue for you. But if you drive a marketing campaign or update your website or make it that much faster on Amazon to do one-click purchase, that's revenue faster. But if you really focus on hiring really great people and doing all that stuff, over time, your revenue grows much faster. I think even Glassdoor did a big study on these companies that were highly rated from culture on Glassdoor, how much more profitable they are in the F500, and also more diverse companies are more profitable overall. Yet you still see companies focusing on short-term solutions, which is a long-term strategic initiative.
Do you think that is because I feel like historically a lot of in recruiters, even in our communication, like you talked about building that alliance, and when I launched LAX TechRecruit, previous to that, I felt like there was recruiters in general were siloed. They didn't want to share their ideas. They didn't want to share their knowledge. They didn't want to, they felt like other recruiters were competition. They didn't link in with each other. So putting each other in this community and sharing these ideas, everybody's just been so thankful to do that. And
it's really changing. Yeah.
The evolution in putting budget into HR, recognizing that need to be creative and evolve in the way that we attract talent, I feel like that's really where we're at today. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's starting. I wouldn't say it's like there yet, but it is so much further than when I started this 10 years ago. I'll tell you that right now. It's so much further along. But there's still a lot of, I still see complaints of recruiters like, oh, I wish our company would invest in building our employer brand and make my job so much easier. Anytime I reach out to people, they don't know who we are, what we do, but it's hard. I think it's human nature to be reactive and to not pause. But when you're truly proactive, you're thinking ahead, right? And that's why I call my company Proactive Talent, because it's about getting out of this reactive way and thinking more proactively and long-term to build a really great program and for the future.
So that hence the name Proactive Talent. That totally makes sense. Okay. Great name, by the way. So I have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up. You're going to be speaking at LAX TechRecruit in July. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to touch upon?
Yeah, I believe we're going to be talking on some sort of topic within employer branding, yet to be determined. So stay tuned. No, but I think this is going to be the TEDx type of talk. And so I'll probably share a little bit about my personal story and journey and my journey through how talent brand, both employer brand and recruitment marketing has evolved, in my career and a little bit of where I think it's going to go. And I hope out of that talk that the recruiters in the audience, but the TA leaders and even HR leaders that are in that audience are a bit inspired and feel like not only on a personal level that they can do anything they really put their mind to, but but as an HR practitioner, they can build better programs that are employee centric and build great employer brands. And they can do it. That's what I hope they get out of it.
You do a conference as well. What's the name of your conference?
Yeah, in 2 weeks, we're going to have our second annual Talent Brand Summit, which is the in real life extension of our Talent Brand Alliance community, where it's an experiential workshop. So it's 2.5 days of really intense building your employer brand program with other EB leaders in the space. It's a vetted event and community. Like, you have to be someone who owns the program at your company and is building it out as a practitioner or as a consultant for your client. But we also do a lot of team building exercises. So we're throwing axes, we're roasting s'mores, we're having really great dinners. The food is amazing. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner are all chef prepared, amazing meals. It's in this great resort. There are after parties and things that you can get to know people and really build. And if you see the video of the attendees last year, like, everyone came back after that summit and they're like, I have friends. Because the thing is, like, most of these people that are building employer brand programs, they're typically the only person in their company doing that. They have no one to commiserate with. And most of them too are managed by someone who doesn't understand what they do either. And so what they do is they come to Talent Brand Summit and they meet this tribe of people solving the same problems they're doing. And they understand that their world is so much bigger, and they develop friendships. And now they leave that summit. And when they hit that roadblock at work, or they're stressed, or they're frustrated on something they're trying to build out for recruiting, they have a network of 500 people to reach out to about it and be like, hey, can someone help me? Oh yeah, sure. I just built a template for that and did that training here. Go ahead, take it. And it's this open source sharing. And what that does is it makes each one of us individually more valuable to each one of our organizations than we ever would have been before. And that happened. That happens at Talent Brand Summit. But you can still get that experience just being in our community day to day. But when you come to a summit, you are really like immersing yourself in a world of 100 other people like you, who are all wanting to share and also learn. So it's a big give and take. But we did a great case study on a company named SAS. Their team came to the last Talent Brand Summit, and they were so inspired after that summit, and they leveraged their network afterwards. They deployed and built out an amazing employer brand activation this past 6 months. That now they're going to come back to Talent Brand Summit and tell everybody what they did. And they did a case study, and they were on our podcast. And it's really inspiring to know that, through my consulting firm, I'm hand-holding companies through some of this transformation, but through what I'm doing with Brian and our board at Talent Brand Alliance is doing it on a much bigger scale. We're doing it like hundreds of companies at a time, helping each other, which just makes you feel really good. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to your attendance here in Los Angeles. I think the value it's going to add to the conference on the employer branding, because our conference is different. It's not focused in one area. It's focused on 3 different tracks, from your C-suite to your manager to your practitioner, and like all the needs and the challenges in between. But our big focus is going to be on people analytics and data, and how you use data and to make those decisions throughout the processes.
Yeah, I'll definitely be able to hit on some of those topics too when I talk about my journey, because that's how I built these programs, right? When I first doing this stuff, they didn't even have job codes in HR for the roles I wanted to build on my team. I had to use data, and I had to fight for every dollar I got to build these programs internally. And then even as a consultant, I got to help my client do that same fight, even just to get us to come in there. I have to help them develop what is an ROI of building employer brands, and then present it with them to their CEO so they understand what they're getting. So I'm really passionate around utilizing data to get and achieve the goals that you're wanting, because I think anything you do should be backed up with data.
That's so good, Will. All right, so 2 more questions. Are you able to share, you feel comfortable sharing your tech stack on what you utilize? Or I know that with companies that you are advising, they have all different types of technologies that they're using, whether they're big or small. So that kind of varies. Do you have preferences?
Yeah. Are you talking about recruiting tech stack or what we use at Practice Talent?
what you use at Proactive Talent and maybe externally as well for your clients.
I mean, our clients are on the board on all kinds of technology, and it really depends on their individual thing. So I can't really talk into that one much, but us at Proactive Talent, we're a different model, right? We are 90% remote workforce. And so I've built my company's tech stack around some ways to support that and the work that they do from home and still build a great culture, right? So we are a big Slack users at Proactive Talent. That's how we do a lot of our internal communication, award and recognizing each other. And we have a really great culture within our Slack community. We're on G Suite for email and collaboration and Drive. So we keep all our records in one place and it's easy to access information about our company and our clients. On our sales and recruiting teams, we use a tool called Mixmax, which is like my favorite tool in the world. It pretty much turns your Gmail into a CRM and scheduling and automation machine. It's great for recruiting and it actually integrates with Greenhouse too. So if you're a scrappy startup that doesn't have a CRM yet, or you want to build your CRM within your Gmail that integrates into your ATS, you got to check out Mixmax. It's awesome. It's magic. And then what else do we use? We use teamwork projects. We really believe in transparency and data. So all of our clients have full access to see exactly where things are in their engagement. We project manage everything through teamwork, and all of our hourly contractors too bill all their time in teamwork and everything. And it's a really great tool. It's not a cheap tool, but it is all encompassing and it's great. You have notes for every call you have with your client in there. You can project manage everything, so a client can go in there, oh, we're about 30% complete with this initiative, blah, blah. And you can report out of there and pull timesheets out of there. It's pretty cool. And it integrates with Slack and a lot of other tools that we use. MailChimp on marketing. We use, we are on Smart Recruiters ATS, but we've used Lever in the past. We're big fans of Greenhouse ATS. They're fantastic. I think they're really building sort of the Salesforce of ATS. They've built a great ecosystem. I like that they play nice with everyone, and sourcing tools, CRMs, recruitment marketing platforms, you can plug them in. Smart Recruiters and Lever do a good job of that too. I think Greenhouse may be a little ahead. They've been doing it a little longer, and they tend to scale really well as well.
But you're on Smart Recruiters? We
are, yeah. Greenhouse is very much built for a corporate hiring environment. I wouldn't say it would be good for our model of company, because our hiring isn't rec based. So when we hire Proactive Talent, it's sort of, we're always pipelining certain skill set and aptitude, and then our sales and growth of our accounts is what drives the growth of our people. And so it's a very proactive pipelining and then activation upon closing a deal.
That's really cool, because here's the thing, because you see so many of the different tech stacks within that are recommended, and you're like, okay, well, with that, what else am I going to
use? A lot of tech. Like seriously, you look at our onboarding thing, and it's a long list of different technology, but depending on your role, and then we do a lot of training on utilization of that technology, and then we have partners that let us play with technology and try new stuff. But we use Pipedrive CRM, which I really love from a sales standpoint. We work with the fine folks at Content App so all our consultants are sharing content and we're amplifying our marketing efforts on social. So it's like a social amplification tool for employees. We use
Pipedrive?
Pipedrive CRM, yeah. I love it because you do all kinds of automation with it, and with Mixmax and other things that we use. We use Quiller for proposals, so we're sending out really nice CMS proposal that's really visual and videos embedded, and they can select an option that they want, and then it's in.
What's that called?
The CRM, Quiller.
Oh, Quiller.
QWILR, I think. It's a really neat proposal tool. Our clients like it too, and you can see like how long they're spending looking at certain parts of your proposal, which helps you make them better. So I like, again, data to prove and better your sales process. So that one's pretty cool. And then from a sourcing standpoint, we've used everything from Intello. We have Zap Info, enterprise licenses that we really love. That really automates a lot of the sourcing process for us. You know, a lot of different social tools. Yeah.
Pretty robust system.
Yeah.
All right, here's
Yes.
my last question to you, Will Staneys. I have 3 pieces of paper. One has a full job description, one has 3 bullet points, and the other is a blank paper. Which do you choose?
Give me the blank paper. Actually, I'll probably blank paper and the bullet point, because that's what my day-to-day typically is. We're building a new model of a company. It's a lot of blank sheets, and then some things we have a little figured out, and we're just building. And that's the same thing with the clients that I work with too. They're either a startup and they're fresh and they've never done hiring before as a company, or and so it's a blank piece of paper. I love those because you get to really educate and help them build that muscle. But sometimes it's a company and they have bullet points of what they do, and they need to get it to that next phase, and that's exciting to me too.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you in July at LAX Tech Recruit. You have yourself a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Bye.